Hello, 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 hello. It's Griff from Humboldt Redwood State Park. It's not plural. How are you? I'm going to wait for a couple minutes to see if some folks join us, and you're like, Griff, what are you doing indoors? You're never indoors. But I am right now, and I'll explain why in just a minute. I'm going to let some of you guys come on, because I didn't announce that we were going to have a live today. So we do have lives every day, Fridays and Sundays at 3:30 on this. Hey, Sandra. Hey, Braid. Hey, Sandra and Braid. I deleted that live that was on California State Park Redwoods, North Coast Redwoods page. Woo, it's always so hard for me to say. Because there was just so much craziness going on with the sounds and people walking by, and I couldn't get the bees to hold still. Imagine the bees not holding still for me. Can you believe that? Didn't do that. So we're going to try again, but I'm going to start inside because it's so windy. I'm in Humboldt Redwood Interpretive Association's library, which has some cool books that aren't in print anymore. And I really feel grateful that they're here, because I read several of them getting ready for our centennial anniversary next year. Humboldt Redwood State Park's 100-year anniversary. It's going to be on. Oh, there's so many cool things to talk about in this park. But today, we're not going to talk about the centennial. What's up, Joseph Martin and Gwenda? How is it going? And Braid, thanks you guys for joining me. This is a little bit different live today because I've been moving all week. And I moved out to my dream house, literally my dream house. I was doing salmon habitat restoration and tree planting on Bull Creek back in 2000, 2001, 2002, 3, and 4. And I used to see this little house out there, and I thought, oh man, I so want to live in that house. And now I do. And almost 16, 17 years later. And it's a beautiful area, and Bull Creek watershed is part of the Humboldt Redwood State Parks, but it's not old growth redwoods. It's like prairies and Doug firs and madrones and a lot of oak woodlands, and it's being rewilded. We're rewilding it. We're bringing the salmon back, into the creek because they got to really low numbers in there, and maybe someday there'll be elk in there again too, and that would make the rewilding. You can figure out what that means, right? Complete. But today we're going to talk about something super cool, and hopefully we're going to see it too. Do you know how many different types of bees live in the United States? It's an unbelievable number. It's 4,000. Okay, over 4,000. And I've always been kind of interested in bees, but I've gotten really interested in pollination ecology in the last 10 years and started to get really interested in native bees in the last few years, thanks to a couple cool books. I'll show you one of them. And the Xerces Society, which is a conservation group that's dedicated to the conservation of invertebrates like insects. Bees, and they focus a lot on pollinators, of course. So I was astounded when one of the rangers caught me over there and says, hey, have you seen in this grass this bee colony? And I was like, huh? And I was expecting a honeybee hive, but it was another bee that I had never seen before. It looked very close to honeybees, and maybe I've seen it before and just called it a honeybee or a hoverfly or something. And so I started studying it, taking pictures, and it took me a really long time to identify it. And just today I got a positive identification on it. And so we're going to talk about that, and we're going to go out and we're going to see them, and we're going to look at them, we're going to spy on them, and we're going to talk about them because it's so fascinating. So there's 1,600 different types of native bees in California, and they all need your help. And you can help them by planting native plants and not using pesticides. So a huge chunk of these native bees only pollinate certain native plants. So if you're not planting native plants in your yard, you're not helping all the native bees. People are like, well, I got flowers, I'm helping the bees. No, you need to plant native plants. That really helps the bees, and it helps the moths and butterflies because they have very specific host plants that they lay their eggs on. Think monarch and milkweed. There's lots of associations like that between butterflies and plants. The coevolution between plants and butterflies and plants and bees is awesome. For example, 1 out of 3 bites that we eat as Americans comes as a result of pollination. And we are going to go outside in a minute. This is not going to be a lecture in the library. It's serious. We're going to go outside in a minute. But bees weren't the first pollinators. Bees actually came from wasps, okay? And beetles started pollinating first, we believe. Historical ecologists believe. And then flowers and bees started evolving to each other. So this wasp was like they were feeding pollen to their larvae, and then some of the adults started checking it out, and so this evolution happened. And the flowers responded to it by creating nectar for the bees and getting longer floral tubes, and then pretty soon the bees started getting longer tongues, and then the bees evolved to get like pollen-carrying sacs on their legs and all kinds of really interesting things that they cooperated. So, we often hear about survival of the fittest, but I think that survival of the most cooperative is actually more common. So we're going to talk about that. Actually, we might talk about that. We might not. I want to show you some pictures real fast. So I took the brown wing furrow bee. Brown wing furrow bee, Halictus farinosus. Okay, so there's your Harry Potter spell for the day. And they have sexual dimorphism. So you're like, sexual dimorphism? Griff, what is sexual dimorphism? Why are you talking about that on a Facebook Live? So sexual dimorphism is when the male and the female in the same species don't look like each other. So a lot of birds are sexually dimorphic because the male will be brightly colored to attract the female, and the female will be brown and drab colored so she could hide on the nest and be camouflaged. Just in case you were wondering why the female bird, like in case you were mad, like how come the female birds aren't pretty too? It's because the male birds are actually expendable. Okay, think of it that way. And it make you feel better about that little gender war or whatever. So the male furrow bees look more like that. They have long antennae and they're skinnier. Their abdomen is that part that people usually call the butt, is skinnier. And these bees are excellent pollinators. They love California poppies, and they get in the California poppy, and they actually, this particular species is the only species they know that does it. It like rolls in the bottom and pulls the pollen down on it. Like, ha, 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 ha. It's probably not really laughing or anything, but it's pulling the pollen down on it. Super cool. Okay, so we're going to go out and check them out. But before I do that, I want you guys to get a good look just in case we can't see them. They're eusocial bees. So like some bumblebees are eusocial, meaning they have like little colonies. And then honeybees are definitely. And so these bees, we'll talk about it when we get outside. So to make sure I got everything. Here's a really good book if you're interested in the subject, California Bees and Blooms. I love it. Written for school gardeners too. And check out these bees. And also, wait, before we go out there, we're going to take the picture of this. So this is not a wasp. This is also a bee called a blood bee. So blood bee, but it sounds better when you go blood bee. So we're going to talk about that too. Oh, one last thing about coevolution. So some bees and the hairs on their bodies are modified to carry mites. So they carry these mites around. They evolved so these mites can live on them. There's lots of kind of mites. Some mites are bad, some are good. But this good type of mite actually jumps off the bee in part of its life cycle, and it eats the fungus that attacks pollen. So this bee kind of brings a cleanup crew with it to flowers, like, hey, flower, what's up? And the mite jumps off, and they're like, I'm going to eat the fungus that's killing the pollen. And the bee's like, I'm going to grab the pollen. So really interesting, multiple mutualistic relationship. Nature is so interesting. Ecology is so interesting. Okay? How did that happen? So the bee has evolved to let this mite live on it, and this mite jumps off and onto the flower and eats a fungus that is attacking the pollen. Wow. Survival of the most cooperative. So we're going to take a picture. We're going to take this picture of this blood bee, and we're going to walk outside. Okay. So I hope you guys can see this. It's super windy. But this is in the authorized personnel only section. So, in this lawn is a huge colony of bees. And I'm not worried about them stinging me because these bees don't sting. Most native bees don't sting. And if they do sting, they can sting you over and over again. Unlike European honeybees that can sting you once before their guts rip out. But we're going to come over here. And I got them this little bee crossing sign. Isn't that cool? What's up, Jim? So, I love this topic too. So here's one bee. Oh man, my shadow. Let me see. Can you guys see the bees flying around? There's so many, but it's just like really hard to get on a camera. And then my shadow ain't helping either. Can you see it? Maybe if I did all shadow. I'm gonna do a little bee search here for a minute. Hopefully you guys can see it. I want to find the blood bee because I want to tell you the story here. So here's a bunch of bees over here. They make little holes. So most of our native bees actually burrow in the ground. So the female comes out, she's pregnant. She comes out of the, boy, whenever my shadow gets on them, I'm gonna have to go on the other side. And my shadow gets on them, they know that the gig is up here. So the female comes out, she's like pregnant when she comes out from hibernation, and she digs a hole and lays some eggs. And the first ones that are born are female workers. And here's a hole anyways. Let me see. This just doesn't work with this camera. No, it doesn't work with this camera. I'm sorry guys, I don't know why I didn't practice this before to see if it picked up. Anyway, she comes out, she digs a hole, and she, the first ones that are born are female. The males are born in June, and then they mate, and they keep making worker bees and some queen bees, and then the queens mate with the males, and then they hibernate, and everybody else dies in the fall. So pretty interesting. I wish I could capture them. I hope you guys can see them. So that blood bee that I was talking about, it's a kleptoparasite. So 15% of the bees, I don't think this is working, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry, I have a lot to learn about taking pictures and videos of insects apparently. So the blood bee, that bee that looked just like a wasp, it lost its hairs and stuff in order to be built like a tank, and it actually doesn't collect much nectar or anything. Oh, here's one right here. Oh, I hope you guys can see it. Shoot, oh, the shadow is killing it. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see that. Anyways, it lays eggs in the colony of the furrow bees, and it stills the pollen, and it lays the egg in the baby, and it eats it. It's a parasitic bee. 50% of bees are parasitic. You all didn't know that. And they look just like wasps, but they're actually bees, and bees are descended from wasps, but it's, you know, not a long shot. Anyways, I wish I could show you guys this. Maybe when the whole pandemic is over. This colony is going to be going on till August. Maybe when the whole pandemic's over, I can bring small groups out here and you can see it because it's so amazing. And sometimes dragonflies are flying over this, and I don't know if they're eating the furrow bees or if they're eating the parasitic blood bees. There's birds often out here. Super cool. Native bees are awesome. And perhaps one day I'll get a good photographer or videographer out here and we'll make a really cool video about these bees. So thank you everybody for coming and watching. Please share our videos, and thank you for being conservationists. The Xerces Society Conservation Group, Xerces, XERCES.org, has tons of information about how you can help bees. They even have this new habitat assessment tool, so it's for urban gardeners, just regular gardeners, and you can so go to the I'll put a link on this post here in a few minutes after I get done. And you can do a habitat assessment of your property to see how you can help bees. And bees, all insects really need our help. They're in really rapid decline, and they're the easiest animal to help. You can have a balcony and help them just by planting some native plants and maybe even providing, like, you know, some area for them to do their nesting in. So Xerces Society, Xerces.org, and their habitat assessment tool. I'll include a link. Thank you very much for wanting to help bees and other wildlife, and I hope that you guys get a chance to come to the park soon. We are open for day use, and hopefully soon this will all be over and you guys can come explore this wonderful, amazing place called Humboldt Redwood State Park. Thank you very much and have a great weekend.